board meeting for the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority. We have a quorum present. We need a motion to excuse 2 members for today, Commissioner Zappel, Mr. Hollis Briggs.
And Ron will be here. He's in his office now. He's tied with our clerk, but he'll be here in a little bit.
Okay.
So moved from Wallace.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, take a motion to adopt our agenda for today.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, approval of our minutes for our October 13th meeting. Mr. Hackman.
October minutes in the packet. Need a motion?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Donna, any public comments, speakers for today? With that, we'll move into our presentations. We have 3 presentations today. We'll start off with a resolution honoring Mr. O'Grady. Please.
Sure.
Whereas the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority is a body politic organized in July 2007 by the City of Wilmington and New Hanover County, North Carolina, to operate the water and sewer utilities for the City of Wilmington and New Hanover County. And whereas Kevin O'Grady was appointed by the City of Wilmington to serve on the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority Board of Directors in 2014, representing citizens as a member of City Council. And whereas Mr. O'Grady has served continuously as an authority member from 2014 to 2021. And whereas Mr. O'Grady has served as the chair of Human Resources Committee and the Communications Committee. And whereas it is the authority's intent to recognize Mr. O'Grady's support of the authority and its employees, his representation of the city's citizens of the City of Wilmington and New Hanover County, his dedication to the principles of water quality, affordability, sustainability, and transparency, and his belief in the authority's role as a steward of the natural resources of the region. Now, therefore, the authority does formally recognize and thank Kevin O'Grady for his service as a member of the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority, adopted this 10th day of November 2021. Thank you, Mr. O'Grady.
Thank you all. I have to say, I can't believe it's been 7 years. It seems like it went by like that, doesn't it? But we've done a lot together. And I want to thank you all. Particularly, I want to thank the staff, who are terrific. I mean, it's a pleasure to be on the board here. I hardly had to do anything. And I want to thank all the board members for your dedication to the principles behind this organization. I was amazed at how focused this board has been on the everyday delivery of water service and sewer service, but more important, when we were struck by lightning a few years ago, through a newspaper report of things we didn't know anything about, the board got to work on it. And of all the water and sewer authorities in the country, I think we've been the most forward in addressing the issue, both as a policy issue and as an engineering issue. And we're about to introduce clean water again, hopefully clean of all the PFAS, if we can get the state to work on reducing the amounts coming down the river. We'll be able to do that forever. And I want to thank you all for your devotion to it and for letting me have some small part in it the last few years. And keep up the good work, because I'm going to be drinking that water. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Mr. Corder, we actually need a motion and vote on that. Thank you.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next up, we have the 2021 annual report. Mr. Waldrop.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, honored board members, thank you for this opportunity to bring you the 2021 year in review. As you know, our bylaws require that we hold an annual meeting in November, that's today, where the executive director presents an annual report on the condition of the authority, and thereafter presents a copy of the report to participating governmental subdivisions of our authority, the City of Wilmington and New Hanover County. I'm pleased to report that the condition of your authority is strong and financially sound. This year we can highlight a few milestones, including a return to in-person business practices and disconnections after the disruption of the pandemic, continued progress on the Sweeney Treatment Enhancement Project and the Kings Bluff Raw Water Transmission Main, a successful move to monthly billing, and the launch of CFPUA COVID relief, the approval of a $91.97 million budget without a rate increase, the third such achievement in a row, and the engagement of your new executive director. Not listed herein because it occurred after the publication of this report, but certainly worth mentioning, is the historic action taken by Secretary Beiser just a week ago to hold polluter Chemours responsible for the groundwater contamination in New Hanover County and elsewhere. Now, despite the impacts of the pandemic, business continues. By way of example, we installed 1,900 water meters over a 10-month period, received almost $9 million worth of water and wastewater infrastructure conveyed to the authority, and had anywhere from 9,000 to 14,000 customer interactions per month via phone calls and emails alone. Our water and wastewater service remains some of the most affordable in the region, with the average amount of customer income spent on water and sewer with the authority below that of our neighboring water systems, Brunswick County, Fayetteville, and Pender County. I must comment on and compliment our customer service staff, who this year managed through the pandemic while successfully executing a move to monthly billing. In the area of service, one of our key values, this department and our financial team were able to be especially dedicated to this value. Through automatic enrollment of delinquent customers into payment plans, to the slow and deliberate return to disconnections while simultaneously standing up a customer service program. This team has taken every action possible to help those most in need, to help them find support and return to normalcy. Our work to permanently address the PFAS issue continues unabated. While temporary granular activated carbon provides partial relief with 40% reduction from source water conditions, our contractor continues to make progress on the $43 million addition of deep bed granular activated carbon filtration at the Sweeney facility. As a reminder, our modeling suggests that this new facility could reduce source water contamination by as much as 90% and reduce Gen X to less than 1 part per trillion for the operational life of the GAC. Our filters are expected to be online in June of 2022. In parallel, we continue to foster resilience through the construction of the Kings Bluff raw water line. Once completed in March of 2022, this project will ensure CFPUA can receive its full allocation while providing much needed redundancy in our raw water supplies. Mr. Tim Holloman, Executive Director of that organization, has joined us today, and we welcome him. We have reserved some time in the Executive Director's report under new business for Tim to answer any questions that you might have regarding this project and the ongoing water line disruption. Infrastructure improvements are a key function of any utility, and as good stewards, our infrastructure projects span the full spectrum of potential activities in the water sector. Here I would note the successful completion of our Richardson capacity expansion in May, and as of Monday of this week, Wells 46 and 47 have been approved by the North Carolina Public Water Supply Section for use in active status and are now available to support both the Monterey Heights system and to supplement the Sweeney Water Treatment Plant service area in our current state of emergency. So congratulations to staff for putting that forward. Finally, I want to point out that one of the most difficult things a utility can do is implement a new enterprise resource planning software upgrade. Again, I want to compliment our customer service and financial departments for their successful completion of this multi-year project in March of 2021. We celebrate the completion of other projects while recognizing that some activities are perpetual. As part of our comprehensive plan to extend services into the north and northeastern areas of New Hanover County, we completed the extension of water service to the Castle Hayne Commercial District. As part of our plan to improve resiliency at our wastewater treatment plants, we completed the Northside wastewater treatment plant improvements. And of special note is our $12.5 million annual Find It, Fix It program, an industry best practice that actively describes multiple, and one would say never-ending efforts to identify, repair, and rehabilitate lines with a history of maintenance issues. Taken collectively, this is evidence of our stewardship and our efforts to ensure our communities will continue to receive sustainable, reliable, and affordable water and wastewater service into the next generation. As a special unit of local government, we honor the public trust to hold ourselves to the highest standards of fiduciary responsibility. As you will learn from our audit report today, your authority is healthy and well managed, with revenues to cover expenditures as well as fund a robust and growing capital improvement plan. Your CFO and auditor will review the financials of FY21 in greater detail after this presentation. So on behalf of your staff and our customers and our stakeholders, I thank you for your continued support. Our staff is here today to serve you and to answer any questions. Hearing none, thank you for receiving the report.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Waldrop. Next, we have the annual comprehensive financial report. Mr. McLean.
Good morning. Included in your packet, you have the annual comprehensive financial report that contains the information on the authority's financial position and results of operations for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2021. The report also contains some additional information that puts the results of this year's operations into context with prior year's results, and also some demographic and operational statistics to give you some context of how those operations fit in with the community and the environment in which the authority operates. I'm pleased to say that this year the authority's financial position improved by over $25 million, and that was directly attributable to the robust level of investment in our capital program that Mr. Waldrop just alluded to, and not only that, but the manner in which those investments were funded. State statute requires that the basic financial statements and the notes to the financial statements that are contained in this report are audited each year. And there's a new requirement this year, a requirement by the LGC, the Local Government Commission, that the auditors on the engagement make a presentation to you on the nature, scope, and results of the audit. So this morning I have with us, pleased to welcome April Adams, who's the partner on the engagement with our audit firm, Cherry Becker, and she has a presentation.
Thanks, John. I'm going to take this off because I feel like I am not the best enunciator anyway, so you'll understand me better with the mask off. All right. So we'll jump right in. Really what I want to cover with you today is just to inform you a little bit about what the role of the external auditor is, then I just want to talk a little bit about what we do detail-wise as a part of the audit, and then I'll give you the results of the audit itself. All right, so the role of the external auditor. We perform your audit in accordance with two different sets of auditing standards. The first set of standards is just the generally accepted auditing standards of the United States. So any audit that gets performed on any type of entity is done under those standards if it's in the United States. And then we add the governmental auditing standards for your audit because of the federal and state dollars that you have flowing through the organization. Once we performed, those standards require us to plan and perform procedures to obtain reasonable assurance that your financial statements are free from material misstatement. And I know that's a mouthful. What does that really mean? That means that we are performing what we call a risk-based audit, and that means we're looking primarily where those financial statements are most susceptible to being materially misstated, and we focus our procedures on that. And so that's what the next couple of slides will cue you in on. Once we performed all of those procedures, we are required to express an opinion on whether those financial statements are free from those material misstatements. We express 3 different opinions within those financial statements that John is providing you. The one is, there's 2 for one of each standards that we audit against, and then the third opinion is a compliance opinion related to the single audit that we performed over some of the state dollars that you received and expended during the year. And then finally, the audit standards require us to communicate certain things to you. We do that in a letter that accompanies your financial statements as well as this presentation. And the types of things that we're required to inform you about is, that we maintained our independence, that if there was any significant changes that occurred in the accounting policies throughout the year, we identify the estimates, and then we also identify report to you if we identified any journal entries during the course of our audit. Okay, so internal controls. We don't actually opine on internal controls, but we are required to do a lot of procedures over internal controls as a part of the audit, and then report to you if we find any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. So the types of internal controls that we're looking at, first we've got up here is the single audit. We are required to review the controls over the administration of those grant dollars as well as actually test. And so we look at monitoring reports from other agencies that have come in that are providing those dollars, and then we're looking at the administrative controls. How are the programs administered, and then testing against those controls. Also, we're required to look at the controls over the organization, the significant transaction cycles. So if you think of how is cash collected, how is cash dispersed, payroll cycle is a significant transaction cycle, as well as how does the information get out of that new ERP system into those financial statements. So we look at all the controls around the capture of all the financial activity throughout the year. Once we've obtained the understanding, we are required to do a walkthrough of one of all the transaction cycles. And so what that means is we take a transaction from the initiation all the way through the reporting, recording it, and actually how does it get in those financial statements. And then from there, we decide if we actually want to test on it and rely upon it as a part of our procedures to gain assurance in looking for those material misstatements. The audit standards also require us to do certain things for journal entries. So we get what we call a data dump of all the journal entries that happen throughout the year. And then we're actually mining that data, looking for significant and unusual transactions. And then we're actually pulling those journal entries and all the supporting documentation, looking at the accounts that were used, looking at the purpose of the journal entry, just kind of checking around to make sure it makes sense, as well as looking for proper review and approval of all that. And then finally, we are required to look at just the general computer controls over IT. I'm not going to stand up here and say I'm an IT specialist, but we are, asking the questions like, is the system itself secure? Are passwords required? Or, and that's just the baseline, but, are the passwords required to be updated, periodically, and those types of things. All right, and so significant audit areas. As I mentioned, we do that risk-based audit, so we were just reporting to you what we deem to be the significant audit areas. It's typically, we're looking for material misstatements, so it's going to be your bigger items that you see flowing through your financial statements. I've listed those in the first 2 columns here. What we're doing here is testing them substantively. So if we can confirm them with a third party, we'll do that. Next line of defense is to look at the relationships of the numbers analytically, and then based on third-party information, especially for utility, if we can look at the consumption against the dollars, we can get a good comfort that those amounts are fairly stated. And then lastly, if we have to, we'll do a test of details. So that means we're actually pulling samples of transactions and all the supporting documentation to gain comfort. And then lastly, I just put over here in the other items, I don't want you to think that we ignore all the other things going on in your financial statements, but our focus is really on those first two buckets. All right, so the key highlights of the results of the audit. As I mentioned, we issued 3 opinions as a part of our audit. All 3 opinions are what we call unmodified opinions. I know that doesn't sound great, but that is also known as a clean opinion. That is the opinion you want, so that is the highest level of assurance that we can give you as a firm that your financial statements are free from those material misstatements we've been looking for, as well as in compliance with administrating that state grant that we did the single audit on. And then as for the required communications, as I mentioned, this is also included in that letter that accompanied your financial statements, but there were no significant changes in accounting policies throughout the year. There are quite a bit of estimates that exist within your financial statement. We call those out because they are based on what management knew at the date of the report, and obviously as things change over the years, those estimates change as well. So they're just calling out what they are, but it's, the depreciation that's based on estimated lives of how long your capital assets individually will be functioning, your unbilled and your allowance for doubtful accounts related to your accounts receivable, the job cost allocations as things are being built, how different amounts are being allocated out to those jobs, your OPEB at pension, and your compensated absences liabilities are all estimates as well. I am happy to report that we did not identify any journal entries as a result of our procedures, so that means, again, that you guys are capturing all the financial activity and reporting it accordingly. And then lastly, it's just to communicate that we didn't have any disagreements with management. We actually had full cooperation with them. They provided us everything that we asked for, and we appreciate that as a part of our audit. It really helps make things go smooth. And then last, for internal controls, as I mentioned, we don't opine on it, but I am able to report to you that we didn't identify any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses as a result of our procedures. So again, that's a clean bill of health as far as I'm concerned for you guys. And now I'll be glad to take any questions.
Thank you, and I also wanted to mention, so the report is included in the packet, but I also have separate bound copies if you would like one. I have a big box full of them, so I'd be happy to provide you with a separate bound copy if you would like one.
Good look, like reading.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, next on our agenda is the consent agenda. Got 8 items before you today. Pick any questions or take a motion to adopt.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Go on to new business, administrative reports, attorney's report, Linda.
I don't have an attorney's report, but we do need to go into about 2 minutes of closed session to discuss Faulkner versus CFPUA and East West Partners versus CFPUA.
Okay. Mr. Sneed.
We need to do this in closed session, but I'd like a little better understanding of how DEQ's recent actions affect CFPUA, if at all, and our legal positions.
Okay. We can discuss that in closed session, how it affects our motion to intervene.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on to the executive director's report, Mr. Waldron.
Thank you, sir. I have a few things that I have listed in our executive director report and a few things that I'd like to add. The first is to acknowledge the historic action that was taken last week to address our concerns with groundwater and PFAS contamination. So if you would indulge me, I'll read the first paragraph only of the letter that Secretary Beiser submitted to Ms. Hughes, plant manager for Chemours Fayetteville Works. The North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ, has determined that Chemours is responsible for contamination of groundwater monitoring wells and water supply wells in New Hanover County and potentially other downstream counties affected by PFAS contamination in the Cape Fear River. Pursuant to 15A NCAC 2L 0101 and paragraph 18 of the consent order entered in by Bladen County Superior Court on February 25th, 2019, Chemours must conduct a comprehensive assessment of this contamination and ultimately prepare an appropriate corrective action to address it. Pursuant to paragraphs 19 through 24 of the consent order, Chemours must also provide replacement drinking water supplies for affected parties. So that is a significant action taken by the Secretary and is the culmination of the work of this organization and others over the last 4 years to continue to hold the polluter Chemours accountable. We will discuss in closed session what that means in terms of our outstanding litigation. But it's appropriate to take a moment to recognize the work that all around the table undertook to accomplish that. On Thursday, after that announcement, Commissioners Zappel, Barfield, Councilman O'Grady, and Rivenpark, and Mayor Sappho communicated the community's appreciation to the Secretary's office for this step. And of course, there's still much work to be done. There's still work to reduce and remove the pollution that remains in the river and to hold Chemours accountable for the expenditures that this authority has made and will make to address that pollution at the Sweeney facility. And we're going to continue to work those problems just as we have worked this particular problem to a solution.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I would like to say that this is really very good news, and like Ken said, something we've been working on for 4 years now. I think the most important thing to me legally is it said, the press release says DEQ has determined that Chemours is responsible for the groundwater wells contamination, and that the citizens are due to get either water from a water supply like us or to get the reverse osmosis system. So I think that's a big step that they made in their announcement, saying they had determined that Chemours was responsible for the groundwater contamination.
Well, and it's about time we got some good news. So this community deserves some good news at some point, and you know, whether this is the start or whatever, I think it was a good cooperation with everybody at the county and Chris Kudre and his staff, and working with CFPUA and all of our elected officials to make this happen. This was not easy. We've been waiting a long time to have something positive to talk about, and this community deserves that in the utmost regard. So that's good news.
What's the timeline? I can't, I mean,
They have 90 days to submit the plan.
respond. And
Submit
then,
their plan, Chemours.
just submit, and then is there a timeline on their plan on when it has to be implemented?
No, not,
Okay.
they look, this, DEQ will look at the plan and decide if it's
If it's
reasonable
reasonable.
or not.
Okay, thank you.
So a lot of work to take the Secretary's action and make it a reality, but we're going to be leaning in as your staff to ensure that that becomes a reality. On a separate topic, I'm pleased to announce that we'll soon begin an update of the authority's strategic plan. We have executed a contract with J.D. Solomon Incorporated to lead that effort. Strategic plans are meant to be dynamic documents that change as a community needs and organization's overall environment changes. Given that the current strategic plan was adopted several years ago, we feel it's appropriate and an opportune time to engage in this process. Now, JD is a fixture in the water industry in North Carolina and South Carolina, having led many strategic planning, development, and implementation efforts over the years. An engineer with a master's degree in finance, holding many certifications, JD has served and led numerous infrastructure, environmental, and economic boards and commissions, including a stint as the chair of the North Carolina Environmental Management Commission. So we're very glad to have him come on board and help us over the next few months engage staff and yourselves through a series of meetings and surveys to update strategic priorities and direction. This process will result in a final deliverable document in February that will coincide with the development of the FY23 budget. Now I'd like to offer the opportunity for questions from the board to our guest, Mr. Tim Holloman, Executive Director of the Lower Cape Fear Water and Sewer Authority. As you're probably aware from the updates we've been providing, on Friday, the authority discovered a rather large leak, somewhere between 30 and 35 million gallons a day, on the 48-inch line serving CFPUA in Pender County. Our partners at the Lower Cape Fear Water and Sewer Authority and Brunswick County, which is their contractor, have been very responsive to the needs of our customers. And we have a unified operational approach to addressing what could be a critical community issue if that line continued to fail. We believe that our contractor on site will begin the process of installing a bypass, very similar to what occurred in 2016, on or about Friday of this week. And it will take at least a week, probably Friday of next week, before that bypass can be engaged. But after it's engaged, we should have then full access to our water allocation. Until then, we are able to receive somewhere between 7 and 9 million gallons a day of water through this ruptured line anyway. And together with our own resources, our own Queensbuck raw water line and emergency wells, we believe that's sufficient to meet our community needs with voluntary conservation. Are there any questions for our guests?
The leak is in a very, very unfriendly area. It's looks like a scene out of a horror movie. It's just bogs and getting the vehicles in and out of there with all the planking and what have you they're doing. It's quite an undertaking. But it's amazing how they get these things fixed. And water is still flowing through the line. Could be worse.
So do we have a plan if for some reason it catastrophically failed before Friday, before the bypass is in place?
We do.
And what is that plan?
We will have to move immediately to mandatory stage 4 water conservation and asked our primary large water users to engage their emergency water supply plans. We will engage some, if not all, of our emergency wells, and believe that we will be able to manage with that approach while the contractor has to go into what is essentially swampland and make an emergency repair. But I believe that the Lower Cape Fear Water and Sewer Authority and their contractor are following a very prudent and conservative approach to this problem. By installing this bypass and making it available to our customers downstream, us in Pender County, before they begin the work of repairing this pipe. And it's not going to be an inexpensive process. If it falls in line with the costs of the 2016 project, $2 to $3 million.
I know Commissioner Zappel had concerns in terms of the long-term financial viability of the Lower Cape Fear Water and Sewer Authority and its impact or effects on CFPUA if they weren't able to meet their financial obligations. I know the county extended a loan a few years past to help them bridge some things, but definitely a concern that I have as well as we're getting, 8 to 10 million gallons a day from them and making sure we're able to meet the needs of our customers as well.
I might answer that or rephrase that. We're very seriously looking at our rate studies and capital improvement plans in the past. Those two were not aligned. Director Ridenbark is also on our board. He can attest that we've spent a lot of time this last year trying to do that. We are trying to improve our financial situation so we can address these topics. If anything, this incident kind of fosters that. We had our first rate increase in about 7 years last year of 5 pennies, but that's that's very little effect overall. But we've always operated trying to keep our customers in mind because they have other projects for rates. So we had a very positive report from the local government commission last year, state treasurer's office, about how we address things. So yes, we are working towards becoming more financially robust to handle these situations, but we still are a little bit, we have some work to do.
I've got a question for Tim. Okay, this is twice in 5 years, so I think we can assume that this is not a one-off catastrophic event, but probably something with the age of the infrastructure that we're going to be facing periodically. Are we doing any planning to look at the process of making these repairs and keeping repair materials on site and bypass materials on site so that we can do these things a little bit quicker and more economically in the future?
We are working on that. In the past, they have not had strong efforts to have repair items on hand. We are working towards that. Last year, we replaced a variable frequency drive. We have another one to replace as far as supply. We're working on adding a fourth pump in about 3 years to help with capacity pumping and add another redundancy. So we are working on those things. Last year, we instituted a long-range planning committee that helped make recommendations to the board that comprises members of our board and also staff members from utilities, which I think is a good thing. I think the Lower Cape Fear had that at one time, utility planning committee, and so basically now it's switched to the long-range planning committee as well.
Thank you.
It just makes the new 54-inch line even loom larger. Because at some point we'll have that in this bump in the road, well, not a bump in the road, but this problem we're facing like right now would be, it wouldn't be nearly as significant. It wouldn't interrupt our water supply.
Correct. And one thing too, the second 10-mile parallel project was not supposed to take place until like 2045, but I think with things like this, that looking at that might be accelerated a little bit because we're only parallel up to the northwest plant, and so the line leak now is just on that singular line coming from us to CFPUA and Independent.
And we kind of, when Tony Bohan gave us his opinion, it appears as though instead of being just a rupture of a section of pipe, it's where like a joint, and it shifted just enough to allow that water to escape. So it wasn't a rupture of the line, it was malfunction of a connector, which is same thing.
Most likely place for
Which
that.
that's the line that's continuing to operate is because of that, because we just a fracture, we'd be a lot more concerned. And we found that out on Saturday for sure. We didn't know that until this past Saturday. If there's no more questions, I would like to say I enjoy working with your staff. They're all phenomenal, and very much so. Kenneth now is the new executive director. He's a great collaborator, facilitator, and I think we're working closer now as having him here, so I enjoyed that. Thank you.
Thank you. And our partners with the Lower Cape Fear and Brunswick County have been exemplary in addressing this issue and working with us closely, as all 4 of us, including Pender County, try to reach a conclusion on this, a successful conclusion. There'll be some kind of after-action report to try to understand what happened and what we can do better, and we will also be looking at additional long-range capital projects to improve resiliency and redundancy. That's definitely got to be in the discussion. I would now offer, if there's no further questions, the key indicators report, the environmental report, and the safety report. Staff are here to answer questions regarding those items. Hearing none, I would wrap up my executive director's report with a requested action item. On November 1st, at the request of staff with the town of Wrightsville Beach, we met to discuss potential modifications of the existing interlocal agreement. As you may recall, we have a temporary 36-month water sales contract with the town of Wrightsville Beach. That water sales contract would expire in April. Wrightsville Beach has an annual maximum 45 million gallon a day take, or 45 million gallon take, and 180 days essentially within that calendar year. This year, they slightly exceeded both, and they're experiencing some problems with wells on the island, and have asked if they could modify the contract to allow for an additional 10 million gallons, an additional 60 days within the original 36-month time frame. We've suggested, and they've agreed, that it's to our mutual benefit to also extend the agreement 1 year to give us time to access appropriately the new infrastructure bill funding that was approved in Washington on Friday, which could provide significant financial opportunities to finance the consolidation that we'd be studying. Our recommendation as staff is to enter into a new contract, and we have a draft version of that. Upon these terms to be reviewed by your authority attorney and signed by myself for an additional 10 million gallons and 60 days in this calendar year, and then 45 million gallons and 180 days in next calendar year, with the caveat that it be at the current published bulk rate of $3.48 per 1,000 gallons. And Town of Wilmington, Wrightsville Beach staff have agreed to present those terms to their board. Are there any questions?
I can't remember what the rate was when we initially did this. Is it the same thing?
No, sir. The original rate. So the original rate was an emergency rate of 65 cents per 1,000. And we're suggesting that it's probably appropriate to take this extension to the published bulk rate. And with the Secretary's action last week of holding Chemours responsible for the contamination of groundwater that led to that emergency rate, I think our friends at Wrightsville Beach agree that's appropriate also.
Good.
But the other point is, these are parallel. We're doing this to continue supplying water, but parallel paths, we're working to the ultimate goal of consolidation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you'll see, once the state budget is adopted, there'll be more funds available to actually fund the consolidation study. It'll give our communities an opportunity to apply for grant money to fund the study, and the study is going to be more than $100,000. There will be grant money available to fund up to $400,000 in study. So that's the next steps, and this gives us some breathing room as your staff to make that the most effective process possible.
And the authority is responsible for all the infrastructure to their wellhead?
For this contract sales, the authority remains responsible for its infrastructure to well 11 and the meter there. Yes.
Okay. And that would include any catastrophic problem with the line going? I mean, that's everything.
Yes, sir. It's the same language that we utilized for the 36-month agreement, with the same protections for both parties.
Is 1 year enough time to do that consolidation study and make it happen?
Possibly not, and if it's not, we'll come back with a recommendation, but I believe having a deadline sharpens the mind and gives us something to focus on. So 12 months is a good way to kind of pace ourselves and try to meet that time frame. Any questions or concerns? We would ask this to be an action item with your authorization for us to enter into a contract reviewed by the authority attorney under these terms.
I motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
That ends my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Waldrop. Move on to our committee reports. Executive Committee met on November 3rd. The minutes are in your packet. There's any comments, questions on that? Move to Long Range Planning Committee, Mr. Sneeden.
Yes, the minutes from our meeting on October 28th are included in your packet. We also have a presentation on strategies for supplying future water needs in the Monterey Heights service area. And Carl, you have that presentation.
Good morning. We had a very good meeting of the Long Range Planning Committee. The full presentation is in your packet. I just have a few summary slides to capture the discussion of that. Our Monterey Heights system in the southern part of the county, it's south of Monkey Junction. Like many other areas in our service area, here you see the Monterey Heights area shown in tan, the tan color. We've seen significant growth there, and to illustrate that, give you a sense of scale, the average water demand is up 33% since 2017, and in 2019, when we had the drought condition, our peak demand was 87% of our total capacity. So we've seen a lot of increases there, which prompted us to also start looking at immediate additional capacities, which those projects we have just recently completed. As Mr. Waldrop mentioned earlier, we have 2 additional well sites, wells 46 and 47 with the 2 red bullets, and then a booster pump station that staff installed earlier this year to convey water from our Sweeney system into Monterey Heights, along with additional interconnects. And all those projects are done, and it has put us into a much better position to meet the near-term demands. This particular graph is always in your packet every month. What those completion of those projects, what that means is we're going to increase our capacity. So that black dotted line that goes horizontally across was originally about 1 million gallon per day capacity, and we'll be increasing that next month in your report to 1.7 million gallons per day capacity, and that's on a 12-hour basis. So we can even go higher than that on a peak day. So again, it has put us into a much better position for the near term. But as we discussed at long range planning, we want to take a much more comprehensive, longer term look in order to see what else do we need to stay ahead of and be proactive of growth in the area. So we looked at 3 major strategies for the long term. The first one was continue a reliance on the existing groundwater well system. It could be a lower initial capital cost if we compare that to other alternatives. But looking for additional wells, we would need at least 4 more wells in the area with a cost of about $8 million to meet the future 2.5 million gallon per day needs in the area. As a con to that is we have been looking for additional wells. We have not been very successful in the last few years. We did 1 test well a couple of years ago, and that one did not turn out to have sufficient capacity and quality of water. We have, in the last year, been looking throughout a pretty large area of that service area for additional land to install a well. We're competing with other folks that are looking for land to build more homes. And so far, we only were able to find 1 site and did an appraisal, but, the cost would be quite significant. So that kind of gave us a good indicator that groundwater system expansion with more wells is going to be challenging in the future.
Carl, when you say in the area, what area are you talking about?
It was the area from Myrtle Grove and Carolina Beach Road back up north to about Gordon Road. So it was a good, third of the whole service area that we canvassed for potential sites. And those would be the most optimum locations for additional wells.
All the way back to Gordon Road?
Excuse me?
Oh, from Myrtle Road to Carolina Beach Road, all the way back to Gordon Road?
Golden Road.
Golden Road.
Golden.
I was going to say Gordon.
Yeah. No, I did say Gordon. I'm sorry. You're correct. So, while long-term use of groundwater, would take a lot of effort, we did feel it was important to at least put that as our baseline on the table and then compare to two additional options. The second one was building a reverse osmosis plant in the southern part of the county, very similar to our Richardson plant. Of course, that would give us very high-quality finished water. The source water quality would be less critical because we would be treating the water. But as a disadvantage on that obviously comes with a very significant cost. Many, many years to plan and design and implement a solution like that. And that is something that we would start almost right away in order to have that facility online when it's needed. And then the third option that we looked at was integrating the Monterey Heights system with our Sweeney system with a caveat that it could also set us up for future potable reuse capabilities from the south side wastewater treatment plant. So initially it would be building infrastructure to bring more water from Sweeney into that area, but that can be expanded in the future with additional resources from a potential potable reuse. It would give us very high quality finished water right away with the Sweeney improvements. It would meet our foreseeable future water demands, projected to be through 2050. And again, like I mentioned, it give a potential supply beyond our build-out capacity of 2.5 million gallons per day in the future with a potable reuse capability. There are some things that we would have to look into from a regulatory perspective, but again, there's time for that. It would go along with our improvements to the south side plant over the next 10 years. So when we considered all that, we did land on this third option for all the positive reasons that we identified, that it does eliminate our sole reliance on just groundwater supplies in that area. It gives us more reliable water supply from the Sweeney system. It does provide for the lowest cost strategy, at least for the current planning horizon. We did identify this in our 20-year plan in 2018 as a long-term strategy. We refined it, did some value engineering on it, made it more cost-effective, but it is in line with that plan. And of course, we would retain the existing wells, the investments that we have made into those wells. They will remain as emergency wells. As we know today, it is very helpful to have emergency wells available for event planning. And then last but certainly not least, this strategy also kind of sets us up for a reuse supply from Southside in the future. And as those capabilities become available. So this slide only shows what projects would be needed to make this happen for the near term. I won't go into all the details, but the biggest project that we would need is an additional booster pump station on River Road and a water line along River Road towards our Veterans Park tank that are identified as P1 and P2. And then there's various smaller infrastructure improvements needed that we would be planning for in the upcoming capital improvement plan. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I assume that the increase in demand is coming from new housing units being built in that area between River Lights, Echo Farms redevelopment, new apartments that have come online in that area as well. Long range, are we planning for future needs in the Castle Hayne area? I know that we're starting to see more projects coming in that area. And, you know, with River Bluffs being there, I know they paid a good chunk of change to get water and sewer to their property. There's a new development that's approved this past week for like 80-some residential homes very close to River Bluffs, but I know that area is going to start to increase in development. So what are our long-term plans for that sector of the county?
We already made some improvements in anticipation for that. With our northern water main, there was a large water transmission main that we completed last year. And we have several other projects already in the planning stages that were identified in the study that we did with New Hanover County for future growth areas as part of the comprehensive plan. And those projects are all in the planning stages at various stages of execution. We are having discussions further with county staff on the timing of those because we are seeing growth being a lot faster and at higher densities than were originally anticipated in the county planning process. So some of those projects will be accelerated, and we're having those discussions with county staff now.
I was glad to see on that slide that you got, you know, I mean, we're seeing potable water reuse. I mean, it's not just talked about. Hopefully that's going to come to fruition. Because, I mean, unless somebody, an engineer, can explain to me how that water should just be dumped right back in the Cape Fear River is beyond me. We go to great lengths, spend great deals of money to treat it, and it would probably be easier to treat that for potable use than it would be something coming through the Sweeney water plant.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, am I so far off on that it's crazy?
No, and it's done in many parts of the country, particularly on the West Coast and obviously around the world in other areas. It requires, from a regulatory perspective, additional treatment steps to do it safely. But it is not an uncommon technology, and it's done in other places.
Let me ask my question this way: if you took a jar of water that came from the King's Bluff and a jar of water that is released into the Cape Fear River after it's gone through, which of those two are the cleanest and safest? Not for drinking, but which one initially are safer?
The effluent from the wastewater plants are obviously, they go through pretty advanced treatment already, as opposed to all the runoff that comes into the river.
We had over at the Lower Cape Fear, we had a guy, was it the guy from Smithfield?
Buddy Harris.
Yeah. I mean, they use everything. I mean, we used to say the only thing you don't use in a pig is a squeal. Well, it's the truth. I mean, they're using everything. I mean, everything. And they generate a lot of wastewater, and they're recycling it and using it again. And it just, because water is the lifeblood. I mean, you can get along a little bit without, less food, but you've got to have water. And this area is, I hate to say the word booming, but this area is growing unprecedentedly, if that's a word. And it seems to be something that I think it's going to take a great deal of education for the public to get their head wrapped around it, that it's good drinking water. Mm-hmm. And it may not be in my lifetime, but I mean, it's got to come. It's got to come at some point. And it needs to keep being marched out there, and sooner or later people will get the idea. I know we can do it. Thank you, Doc.
Do we get operational cost savings by not having to run then the Monterey Heights water system? I mean, or is it offset by costs that we'd incur with the higher Sweeney volume? I mean, is there potentially cost savings that gets passed along?
There would be some cost savings in terms of managing 7 different well sites and going out there, with staff making daily visits. Those resources could be used much better elsewhere. Obviously, regionalization and providing the water from a central location and then distributing it is more cost effective in general to do as opposed to all these little satellite locations. But it does take some infrastructure improvements first to make that happen. And that's what we will be bringing forward to you in the CIP.
Well, I would like to second Mr. Ivanbark's comments about reuse. I think that's very good, and I would hope that we could be proactive in trying to work with other utilities in the state to get a reasonable regulatory framework for that that would make this more possible. And I think I can't believe that the areas up there in the Piedmont that are growing more than we are not facing bigger issues than we are, and that they would try to support that movement also. And again, for us, it's for grandchildren and great-grandchildren, but I think we need to be making those plans. So thank you. I appreciate the staff working with us on that.
Thank you, Mr. Sneed. Thank you, Carl. Next on our agenda is Finance Committee. Ms. Adams.
Meeting minutes from our November 3rd, last week's meeting are in your packet, and we have two presentations, monthly financials, and then a customer service update with disconnections.
Okay, so just very briefly, just a snapshot at our revenues versus our expenditures for the system as a whole as of the end of September. You can see our at the bottom there on line 20, our total unrestricted fund balance is $68 million, which is well above our target of $50 million. So looking good there. On line 13, you'll see that through September, our expenditures have exceeded our revenues. Again, that's just due to just a kind of a timing thing with a large debt service payment on line 11 that came due on August 1st. So that was a very large expenditure. It's probably somewhere around 15% of the total budget hits on that one day in terms of that debt service payment. But as revenues continue to come in through the end of the year, we're anticipating that change in fund balance to go from a negative to hopefully a slight positive, or in a perfect world, to zero. On the capital side, you see that our expenditures have exceeded our revenues there by $3.3 million. Again, that is just the expenditure of funding sources that were received in prior years. The bond proceeds that were issued back in 2019 that are being spent on the Sweeney upgrades for the GAC, and also for our share of the new raw water line. Let's see, I'll just take you real quick through revenues. So this is a look as of October 31st. So that's 1/3 through the year. And so what we generally like to see in this bottom number here is for this percentage to be greater than that 33%, in terms of the progress through the year. So everything's looking good from a revenue side, and again, any surplus or deficit is really a function of how revenues perform, kind of relative to where we thought that they would be in terms of the budget. I did want to mention that we have calculated the operating surplus for FY21. We always bring this to the board at the November meeting after the audit's been done. That surplus number was $906,450, and I made a recommendation to the Finance Committee that that money just sit. We do consider operating surpluses as one-time revenues. One-time revenues are precluded from being used to fund ongoing expenditures, and so there's only certain uses that those one-time revenues can be used for, and so kind of that last option there is just to have it sit in that undesignated fund balance. And that recommendation was made by me in light of some pressing capital needs that we have both in the southern part of the county and in the northern part of the county. Just thought it best to have that sit in that undesignated fund balance to be available to fund those needs. So there's no formal action that needs to be taken on that. If the board agrees with the Finance Committee's recommendation that those surplus funds just kind of sit in that undesignated fund balance number. Are there any questions there? All right, thank you.
I will say that this action item is somewhat identical to what is in the Sustainability Committee action item, so we're just presenting it here first, because I won the arm race.
All right, these are hot off the press numbers from this morning. So every time I've given this presentation, they've changed slightly. So again, this is as of this morning around 7 a.m. The one thing that hasn't changed is the program for the ARPA funds has been defined to include any delinquent charges that were incurred between January the 27th of 2020 and October the 15th of 2021. Currently, the application deadline is December the 31st, although we are in talks with the city and the county about extending that application deadline. I'm not sure that we have an absolute on what that deadline will be right now, but if that is made, I will let you know at that time. So to date, we have 731 customers that are being considered for the ARPA funds. Another 203 had actually put in applications, and they were either deemed to be ineligible or a duplicate of one that was already in consideration. We've awarded or found 246 accounts that have award amounts on them, and they are in some stage of award. So some of the payments have been received, some of them are pending agreements with the customer or pending payment from the city or the county. So of the applicants that have award amounts, we do have 178 of those customers that have balances that are either prior to January 27th of 2020 or that are not qualified in terms of being delinquent as of the October 15th. And that amount equals right around $38,000. For those customers who have an amount outside those dates, we do offer the payment plan for the whatever that delta is between what funds were awarded to them and what funds remain delinquent on their account. So the award value is around $180,000 with the median amount being $400, and the award range runs between $50 all the way up to $3,700, so quite a difference. And of the applicants, 75% of those actually reside within the city limits. So just a reminder, residential disconnects began the week of September 20th. We started sending out letters at the beginning of September. We took a small break at the beginning of October in order to transition into the monthly billing. But we have resumed the letters. So to date, we've sent out almost 1,600 delinquency letters, and those letters were sent to anybody who has a balance in excess of $625. So we really moved down that chart, and we have increased the number of letters. So, for example, the letters that will go out with a discount of the last week of November, there are about 400 disconnect letters in that file for the residential customers. So 815 of the 1,591 reached the date of disconnection, meaning that we have reached that date where they needed to pay by. So then the difference between those two are ones that are either going to be disconnected next week or the last week of November. Just a reminder, we're not cutting off the week of Thanksgiving. nor the week that either precedes Christmas or follows Christmas. So 343 accounts of the 815 were actually disconnected, meaning, we either received payment or a pledge or somebody put a payment plan in place in order to stop that disconnect. And then 137 are still disconnected, but 59 of those are actually from this week's disconnection. We are recommending that we go ahead and hold off the late fees on the residential accounts until January. That gives customers an opportunity to actually build their monthly bill into their budget, but it also gives the customers the opportunity to have 2 cycle bills where they will have received a monthly statement before we start instituting the late fees again. And then finally, the transition to tiered rates, we had talked about actually doing that in January of 2022, but various factors have led to us proposing that we actually wait for that tiered rate structure change. Some of those were based on the stability of the platform, of the billing system. Also, the number of things that we've done lately, we don't want customers to continue to have this disruption fatigue. They just went to multi-billing, and then 2 months later, to actually have a new rate structure to add on top of that. In addition, there is some staff change fatigue. We do have a lot of turnover in the customer service area. And as we start making these changes, between disconnects and the monthly rate structure, the monthly billing change, we don't want to add that on top of that for those staff. Finally, we need more monthly data in order to actually build that rate structure off of. Currently, what John had calculated was based on bi-monthly data. So we would like to have more monthly data to actually use when we head into the new tiered rate structure. And then the last point, that we would need to modify the authority rate model as well. So with that, I will stand for any questions you have about any of the ARPA funding or the disconnections.
I have a question,
Yes,
Christy.
ma'am.
So for the municipal government folks that are here, could you talk a little bit about our concern that we will end up with the December 31st expiration of applications, that we may miss a ton of customers
Sure.
and end up leaving money on the table?
Sure. So, as we start working down what we had before COVID, when it came to actual disconnects, anybody that had a balance over $100, we would actually look at disconnecting. As we moved further and further away from the last time that we did disconnects, we started using $450 as a threshold. We have a large number of customers that are between that $100 and the $625. So we still have about 1,800 customers that have delinquent balances in excess of $450 that are aged greater than 60 days. I can only send out so many letters. So I'm already at the end of November, and I have about 2 weeks in December that I can still cover with the disconnects, but there's no way to bridge that gap between how many customers we need to reach and then how many customers may actually not get a disconnect letter until after the end of the year and may not be encouraged to actually apply for the ARPA funds. So a great way of communicating to the customer, unfortunately, is with a disconnect letter, and that's when a lot of these customers are actually reaching out and making arrangements to try to get those funds. So if we're not able to connect with those people, they may lose that opportunity.
So we're hoping that the city and the county will
Yes.
extend
Right.
the application period
Correct.
into the spring. And we probably will be able to reach all of our people by
I'm
March,
hoping,
April.
honestly, that we can get all the way back to normal by the end of February.
So just a 2 to 3 month extension. And how much of the money have we gone through, did you say?
180,000.
So we've got 80% of the allocation that we received from the county, and the city has not been used.
Has that request been made to the city or the county?
We talked, I spoke with the finance director at the city. She expressed some concerns just about, in her view, about holding customers accountable and at what point does that really happen. You know, we don't want to incentivize bad behavior, customers to not pay. I expressed to her what Chrissy just, expressed to you, that unfortunately it's those disconnect letters that are really forcing, the customers to take action. And, we're just concerned that by that December 31st deadline, we're not going to have made it through that list, to fully reach all those customers. She did agree that we would take a look at December 31st when that deadline was reached to see where we were in terms of how far we were through the funding, and she would consider extending that deadline further.
So is the concern the timing or the amount of money? Is there, if you got an extension on the timing, so you could send the letters out later, would there be enough money to?
I believe so.
Okay, so it's not additional money, it's merely changing the timing.
Right.
Okay.
Personally, I would have Ken go directly to Tony Call. I mean, I think that's where, certainly you need to put it out there, but the request needs to, don't you agree?
Yeah.
Kevin? Needs to go to the city manager.
Maybe his phone will ring this afternoon.
Yeah.
Somebody. I suspect it will.
Because the rate limiting step really is our staff. We don't have enough staff to push this all through quickly enough.
I understand.
So-
But that's the first I've
Yeah.
heard of it.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Okay.
perfect.
Well, I know from our standpoint, it's not the staff that'll make that determination. It's the Board of County Commissioners ultimately that will decide to extend whatever. And I think you got two commissioners here that would not want to see money left on the table. We can help people. And I hate bureaucracy when you just start putting roadblocks in the way of people, and then you have a whole bunch of money that got to send back to the Fed because we weren't smart enough to help people. And so get away from the folks with bad behavior. The federal government send money to help people. And the goal is to help people, not put roadblocks in front of people.
Question. First of all, I apologize for being late. Thank you for your patience. Christy, is there anything magic about the 100 letters per week? Can we pick up the pace of that to?
We have.
I
So
see.
originally we had started out only doing around 100. What we sent out yesterday, I think there were 383 letters that went out. And the week prior, there were around 375 letters that went out. So again, we're still, the same staff that's reading those 75,000 meters monthly, they're also responsible for doing the disconnects. And all, just like the call center, we have a lot of turnover. And so they're getting used to the new routes. They're learning the disconnect process. So, we're just trying to gauge to, what that impact is on that work group.
So it's a staffing issue at this point. We're reaching the maximum
Right.
they can do.
It is.
That's good. Second question, are we seeing any rebound customers? Those that had theirs paid off now falling into arrears again from this first cohort of people that we've helped?
Not to the point where they would be disconnected again.
But they are not paying their bills?
I can't say that for sure. I haven't went back to look to see whether or not we have any recidivists in that group. But the majority of the payments that have been coming in have come in at the end of September or at the beginning of October. So they may have only just now received a bill and would not be considered delinquent.
Need more time. Yeah.
Yes. All right.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next, Sustainability Committee, Dr. Cannon.
Yes, so we covered a lot of ground at our last meeting. The minutes are in your packet. We do want to present one item briefly, this gorgeous annual resiliency report that Aaron and Lindsay and the team put together over the past few months. We're going to make it sort of a regular feature each year, and we're sort of holding ourselves to account and setting a roadmap for addressing climate and energy usage. Can I shut this?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Erin Tremblay, and I'm the Public and Environmental Policy Specialist, previously under Lindsay Halleck and now under Beth Eckert. I'm here to briefly review CFPUA's first ever resiliency report. This report was created by collaboration between CFPUA's Climate Resiliency Working Group and the Public and Environmental Policy Department. Each board member has a copy, but generally we want to keep the report virtual in order to conserve paper. The virtual version will be published on CFPUA's website after this meeting at cfpua.org/environment. So the goal of this report is to provide a transparent account of our sustainability and climate resiliency initiatives, both internally and externally, and in doing so, we'll track our resiliency progress over time. To keep things brief, I'm going to review the greenhouse gas infographic on page 10 and then move on to the looking ahead section on page 22. This infographic on page 10 is a snapshot of CFPUA's third annual greenhouse gas inventory. The data is from 2020, and all the numbers are expressed in metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions. Compared to 2019, the 2020 inventory showed a 19% reduction in emissions. CFPUA emitted 17,805 metric tons of greenhouse gases in 2020, whereas we emitted 21,184 metric tons of greenhouse gases in 2019. A large part of this reduction is due to the pandemic. The number of employees commuting, traveling, and working in the office decreased, which resulted in less emissions from vehicles and electricity associated with being in the office. On the right side of the infographic, you'll see CFPUA's emissions makeup. This graphic shows specifically what produced emissions. You'll see that the largest cause of emissions is electricity at 57% of total emissions. Along the bottom of the infographic, under 2020 emissions across operations, CFPUA's emissions producing activities are shown. Wastewater collection and treatment is the largest contributor to emissions, followed by water treatment and distribution. These high percentages are largely due to the amount of electricity required for those operations. So those are just a few highlights for the infographic, but you can actually glean a lot from the infographic if you take a few minutes to look at each graphic. Now moving ahead to the looking ahead section on page 22. We are recommending 7 resiliency projects for the upcoming year. Most of these projects will prepare us to implement impactful resiliency initiatives by helping us gather the necessary data and setting the stage for internal momentum and environmentally responsible decision making. For example, forming an environmental data task force will help CFPUA identify data collection processes that work for the organization and that meet mitigation and adaptation data needs. Another example is allocating funding for electric vehicles and charging infrastructure into the CIP. This will formalize the LEV purchasing process and secure a pathway for reducing our emissions through fleet electrification. The other preparatory and data-centric projects include the Employee Climate Survey, establishing green accounting standards, and approving greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. Each recommended project has the same layout, background, benefits, costs, and funding mechanism. At this time, we are not requesting any funding, but if and when the time comes to fund these projects, we plan to integrate the request into existing budget processes. In next year's resiliency report, we will add these projects in the looking ahead section into CFPUA's resiliency inventory and report on progress and lessons learned. We will then include new recommended resiliency projects in this looking ahead section next year. That's all I have for this. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Thank you.
I had one comment. This is really well done. Like, it reads well, it presents well. I mean, it's really good.
Great, thanks.
Good job.
That's great to hear. We put a lot of work into it, so.
All right, thank you so much, Erin. That concludes my report.
Okay. Is there any old business or closing comments before we go into closed session? That I'll take a motion to go in closed session.
I would like to say one thing.
Oh, Mr. Barfield?
With each passing day, I'm even more convinced that we had the right executive director. Ken is a great communicator and a great asset to this organization, and I'm glad he's on the team.
Here. And Kevin, we will miss you.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe I'll be back.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Want to take a motion to go into closed session?
Yes, we need to motion to go in to discuss Faulkner versus McKimmon Creed and SCP versus CFPUA, and also to discuss CFPUA versus DEQ.
So moved.
That's all?
All right.
Second. Other than that.